Welcome everyone to episode number, Rishabh, which episode are we in?
16. 16, right?
16. It's fantastic. 16 weeks. Episode number 16 of the GenAI CIO podcast. It's Shiva here, founder of Lizer, the world's simplest agent framework company. And I'm joined by Rishabh, co-founder of GoML, which is a GenAI consulting company. So we have some interesting updates for you. A lot of things did happen last week. So we have some interesting updates. So let's get started with the first one. Rishabh, over to you.
Sure, thanks, Shiva. And I think the biggest and the greatest update that we had last week was, and Shiva, you and I were speaking about Anthropic, how it's actually losing steam, right? With Claude 2 model, we're not able to leverage why it's good for the POCs and the MVPs that we're doing, but we're not able to leverage it in any of our production workloads, right? I think the founders were listening to a podcast just on a light note, but Anthropic came back or released one of the strongest models till date in their offering, which is Claude 3 series, right? Which again, while we'll dive a little deeper into how it's performing, but it's slated to be as good as GPT-4 and Gemini Ultra, right? But as closer as we can get to AGI in this stage as of today, right? But just before we dive deeper into how it's performing, let me just help our listeners understand what Claude 3 is. So Claude 3 is, unlike the previous versions that they've actually released, it's a series of models that they've brought out, like what we're seeing with most of the releases that are happening, right? So what they've done is they've given us three separate options in terms of consumption: Sonnet, Opus, and Haiku. Haiku is yet to be released, for the public to consume, but Opus and Sonnet are something that you can actually consume as an API endpoint, as well as if you have a Anthropic premium subscription, you can go to their website and start using as well. Sonnet is kind of a low or probably a smaller model that they've released, which can probably run on smaller or edge devices. Whereas Opus is more enterprise ready model that they've actually released, which is across, and they've started distributing this across. And this is something that Claude, has made it as a practice that while they do give you an API endpoint consumption for any model starting 2, and then 2.1 and now 3, but the distribution itself, when they release the model, they actually allow you to consume it through different areas, like in this case, Bedrock and in Google Vertex AI as well, right? So that's what Anthropic actually took everyone as well. But one major update that they did, Shiva, this time was, whereas the previous models were mostly text based, right? Claude 3 now brings in multimodal capabilities, right? So which means you can actually interact with, you can use it to generate images, you can leverage your voice, text, etc. Video, I've not, at least based on my understanding and usage, video is still not part of Claude 3 suite yet, right? But at least from image and text and voice perspective is something that the users are using. I mean, in the paper, they've clearly mentioned that GPT-4, and this is something to be read as a fine print, Shiva, in the paper, right? They've compared it with GPT-4, and most of the use cases, most of the benchmarks, it has performed pretty much better than GPT-4, and with Gemini Ultra. But and there's an asterisk marks and there's a footnote which actually states that it doesn't perform as, or is that is not at par as GPT-4 Turbo, right? So my only side note, while again we'll dive deeper, is that you're comparing it to a model which was released almost a year back, right, by OpenAI, and not with the latest model, right? So that's where Anthropic has come up with. I'm not sure, Shiva, if you have tried. I have tried, and I would want to share some insights before I get deeper into it.
Yeah, no, I haven't tried yet. I'm planning to cancel my Gemini subscription and move to Claude now. My theory is I'm going to use $60 per month as a budget, and I'm going to just switch between three players time and again. One is ChatGPT, another one is Perplexity. So those two firms are kind of strong. The third one is where Gemini and Claude are kind of, switching between these two. So I've cancelled Gemini and I will move to Claude and start trying the Claude option, how it is. Yeah, what I was saying was we've been pulling Anthropic's leg for quite some time. We do continue to pull Google's leg as well. I don't know what Google has in store, but Anthropic's Claude 3 just, I think, took the whole industry by surprise, because this is probably the first model that really truly competes with GPT-4 on the reasoning side. While Google's Gemini was really good on the generation side, this was the first one that could really compete on the reasoning side, which is why Claude 3 is getting a lot of these positive feedback from all the testers and developers. So yeah, I mean, and again, personally, from our company standpoint, we've been speaking to a lot of AWS customers who have been running their things on AWS, but using OpenAI GPT-4 directly for access. That's where I think Azure was running away with all the customers. Now, with Claude being available on Bedrock, the secure version of Claude, where customer can run everything within their VPC, that's a massive plus for customers on AWS and companies who help customers build their GenAI on AWS actually. So, in a lot of ways, I think Claude 3 launch is good because now there is a model that can challenge GPT-4 on the reasoning side. There is a model that is more secure and available, and Anthropic has always been focusing around AI safety as a key aspect. So all these definitely adds lot of strength to this LLM race. Next up, it's going to be GPT-5. Let's see what happens there. Llama 3 is coming out, and Mistral's new model is planned sometime soon. So because of Claude 3, now the benchmark has further gone up for all these models. So it's an interesting phase. It's a fantastic launch by Anthropic though.
While everyone is claiming Shiva, that's why I thought I'll probably, or the team will at GoML probably will get their hands dirty for Claude 3, because as everyone knows, we are a partner with AWS and we build a lot of Bedrock models. While everyone is saying that it is at par with GPT-4 or probably Gemini Ultra for that matter. But one thing that we did notice, right, Shiva, right, and when we ran a couple of tests, like, your, especially on the mathematical side, right, when we actually tried asking it a couple of questions on the mathematical problems, or probably even a standard test that is generally used for reasoning, which is, count the number of apples, right? That's a very big benchmark, and you actually test the reasoning capability. What we noticed was that when it's zero-shot prompting, right, GPT-4 and Ultra are giving better responses than Claude, right? Even with Claude 3, right? But when you actually enter into a chain of thought prompting, when you actually are setting context, personality, etc., which our viewers would be aware of, right? Obviously, Claude 3's increment in the accuracy and the response is much, much, much higher than GPT-4 and Ultra. So I think that's where they have developed their niche, right? When you probably set the context and probably use a chain of thought prompting, that's where we saw the accuracy was higher. But one thing that was really stood out, right, Shiva, was that the responses that we were getting, and that's why I think when they also released Claude 3 or what the industry veterans like Jan Licken and all are also saying that the closest that we have gotten to AGI till now, right, is where Claude 3 is today, because the responses that came in were very empathetic, right? They were not straightforward responses that what GPT gives you, that this is the response, right? They were like very empathetic. In one scenario, it actually came back and said, I am, learning like you, so this is what I think would be the right response. But obviously, let's learn together. And it was a direct mathematical question that we had asked. So I think that's where it definitely wins. But I was just also reading this report, Shiva, where it's needle in a haystack report, right? Test that's actually done across, LLMs to probably understand how well they know how to problem solving skills, right? Claude 3, which no other model till date has been able to do, Claude 3 was not only able to tell that the needle was way away from the haystack, right, when the scientists were testing it out, but it actually said, clearly that, you have deliberately kept it away because I think you're trying to test my knowledge. So it was able to identify that it was a made-up test to test its knowledge, right? So I think in that matter, definitely Claude 3 is definitely is probably reaching standards which none of the LLMs have to date.
Correct. No, there is also another example that a test somebody ran where they gave the script of a very less spoken language, probably less number of people speak that language. And Claude was able to just use a sample set of the whole language and transcript and come up with further on the fly training and respond back better. So yes, definitely something that these guys done in the back end is pretty strong. My strong intuition is towards the mixture of experts model, because that seems to be the way to go by all these models. So Anthropic is probably have a better mixture of experts, or probably more number of experts, probably bring in another layer of super experts to select the right combination of mixture of experts and then go about. We'll have to wait and see I mean, some any technical paper coming out. One other, I would say, good thing about Anthropic, what they did was they have made their system prompt open. I mean, made it public for everyone to see. So the base system prompts are available for everyone to kind of look at now. So that is another good thing that OpenAI has done. Sorry, Anthropic has done.
Shiva, you're
Okay,
obsessed with
so we have
Let's move on.
yeah, good number two. Yes. Let's move on. Another interesting twist. I think it was always brewing, but it happened. Elon Musk finally openly has sued OpenAI, and his claims are pretty straightforward. That hey, you have breached the trust. This is not why you started OpenAI in the first place. It was supposed to be a non-profit, but then you created a for-profit beneath the non-profit, and then you started trying to gain commercial advantage. That is point number one. Point number two that he said is he also claims is that GPT-4 is already AGI, probably, and as part of the deal that they signed with Microsoft, OpenAI cannot sell GPT-4 anymore to Microsoft. So that's the other thing that he's also kind of highlighted. So these are two key aspects that he's kind of highlighted, and he sued OpenAI for clarifications. The thing is, if it goes to trial, all of OpenAI's internal documentations will have to be shared. Right now, what OpenAI did was they shared a redacted version of Elon Musk's emails, which I still feel childish. But if it goes to trial, all the documents will have to be made public, or at least the lawyers to the lawyers' eyes. That's going to be really, really crazy if that happens, because OpenAI, in contrary to the name, they've been very secret company. To be honest, yes, they've given a fantastic technology, but there's a lot of secrecy. We still don't know why the board members got fired. There's still a lot of secrecy that's going around. Vinod Khosla, who's one of the investors into OpenAI, and I would say he's a ardent supporter of Sam Altman, has been batting for him a lot, to an extent where he challenged Elon Musk to see why is he not open sourcing Grok, and Elon Musk just made an announcement yesterday that he's open sourcing Grok also. So yeah, it's just crazy last week. We don't know where it's going to lead the whole thing to. But yeah, what are your thoughts on this?
So while obviously Musk has always been open in terms of anything and everything that he doesn't like, but specifically on OpenAI, right, Shiva, that they've diverted from their mission eventually, which all of us agree, right? Obviously, they're no longer a non-profit organization and so on, right?
Yeah.
But the one thing that I'm sensing probably, which is a little, what should I say, is why or how does this coincide? The whole, swing part, OpenAI goes and invests into Figure AI, which is a direct competition to obviously Tesla goes, right, that Musk is building, right? Another theory that probably, Shiva, I was actually going through this report that obviously there was a point when, Larry Page and Musk were very close. And our, listeners, probably for people who don't know, this is a very non-well kept secret that Google was about to acquire Tesla at one point when they were about to declare bankruptcy, right? Did not happen. And then Larry Page had actually come to, or probably Musk and Larry Page wanted to probably work together on safety of AI. But then Larry Page eventually said that he wants to probably build something which is much more bigger from AI perspective, and that's where I think both of them started, falling apart, or their friendship started falling apart. Now Gemini coming up with their announcement, or Ultra coming up with their announcement, right? GPT-4 obviously making then inroads, and now GPT-5 probably would be released this year. OpenAI going and investing into Figure AI. So all this probably is coinciding with Musk suing OpenAI. So is it only because of that mission issue, right, that he has a concern with, or it's a competitive issue as well, right? So that's what I'm not able to probably wrap my head around. What exactly Musk wants to achieve with this suit. One thing you definitely highlighted, yes, they will have to make these documents public. But another report actually says very clearly, although they've not released any documentation around it, but Sam Altman and Greg Brockman have actually
Brockman.
clearly stated that there was no contract ever that stated in writing with Musk that it's going to be an open source company, right? So let's see where it goes. But I honestly don't feel sure this is going to be a big hurdle for OpenAI, except obviously it might just delay a couple of things. That's what my anticipation is.
I mean, yeah, it's that's again, it's going to be it can be an open shut case. It might end quickly depending upon how many higher powers are involved into the whole thing, or it could kind of blow up and open up a can of worms. So we'll have to just wait and see
Exactly.
how this whole thing proceeds. But yeah, but this is definitely a massive distraction to Sam Altman and co. Given what they were trying to do with all the Sora and other new things that are coming out. Let's see if they continue to ship. At least Rishabh, you and I know what distraction is all about. So,
Yeah, absolutely.
how do we operate
And
with all the distraction is going to be the key.
absolutely. And just that Sam Altman has just been brought back onto the board and officially reinstated as the CEO, right?
Yes.
Being welcomed with this news is not a welcome news, right? So definitely it's going to be a distraction, but I seriously feel again, Shiva, this is not going to be a big deal for OpenAI, right? So, but yeah, I think let's wait and watch.
Yes. So moving on, while the Claude 3 news was out, Inflection, which is another massively funded company started by one of the folks from Google DeepMind anyway. Inflection AI launched their Pi. I mean, they upgraded their Pi chatbot to their backend model, which is 2.5, and it is already boasting GPT-4 level capabilities. Now there is a I would say there is a rumor going around that it is actually a wrapper on top of GPT-4. The whole model is a wrapper on top of GPT-4. We don't know much about that. It is still a rumor. But long story short, Inflection is also kind of came into news challenging GPT-4. Unlike Claude or Mistral, they haven't captured the market in a big way. I think it's high time they should have done that. But yeah, it kind of sounds like yet another model around in the market. That's pretty much what we have to say about Inflection. But one point I want to make is, with all these companies challenging GPT-4, OpenAI will have to come up with something stunning with GPT-5. So that's my view.
Sure, what I feel right, a lot of times companies just use GPT-4 to increase the SEO of their models, right? Like any company that actually comes in the market, they first actually say, okay, it's actually closer to GPT-4 or probably GPT model, right? Although that's on a lighter note. But see, I think what I'd be very interesting as a consumer, because we consume these models heavily, right, for our customers, right? And every other, and I think this is one thing that Shiva, you and I discussed that in our podcast. If we start covering every model that's actually released, probably every week, I think our podcast would be at least a 3 hour long podcast, right? So
Yeah.
honestly, I think models coming into the market, but I have nothing against Inflection or Anthropic, right? Models coming into market, I think is now norm, right? And probably models coming in, probably being at par with 3.5, being at par with Ultra, or probably being at par with Llama, and so on and so forth, right? Is also quite a norm. I think one thing that these companies need to start changing is what are the use cases that they are, or what is the moat that they've started building out around these models, and that's why when I actually spoke about Claude 3, and this is something that they've heavily focused in their paper as well, the Lee's paper as well, is that the responses are very empathetic, human type, because that's a mode that they've created for their model, right? While there's context window, it's probably I think 200K, but on demand you can get 1 million, and so on and so forth, right? But they've not focused heavily on context window, right? That's what they focus on. So I think these models will have to slowly start focusing on what are the use cases and what's the moat. Why should I actually come to you?
Yeah.
Right? I will not come to your model because it's as good as GPT-4. Then I would probably go to GPT-4, right? So I think that's where I would, at least as a consumer, I would like to see a change in how, what should I say, how these models are actually released or consumed.
Yeah. I mean, look at in your case and our case and Lizers and GoML scenario. It is still GPT heavy, and some Claude is coming in now, thanks to Claude 3. But otherwise, there is no Gemini in picture, no Mistral in picture, no Llama in picture. We are not even seeing Llama and Mistral in picture, which are like older models. What will Inflection do? Now, Cohere launched a model. Who will use Cohere? Like, there are so many things. Cohere also launched apparently a GPT-4 equivalent model yesterday called, the Cohere 3, I think, something they launched. So, long story short, it is just becoming like the analogy I always give, right? Toothpaste and Walmart analogy. So, you go to buy a toothpaste and you'll have like ton of toothpaste there. Which one will you buy? So, it's crazy actually. Yeah.
That's why the use case based approach, like probably, I'm just giving an example, like I always what we tell our customers as well, right? Is probably if you have an NLP use case, GPT series is probably the best, and probably in that also GPT-4 is the best, right? So every of these models that are actually coming need to actually identify that niche that their model will perform. Like one size fits all approach will not work, or at least what we've seen in our experience while implementing these will not work, right? Same goes for the companies as well. Like one model solving all your problems, be it open source or closed source, will also not work. For some use cases, you will have to look at closed source models like probably, GPT, because that's the demand. For some use cases where your data is very critical, you need to maintain ownership of the data and so on, you have to look at open source model and so on and so forth. Right? So a cookie cutter solution approach will not work is what I'm trying to say, right, Shiva? So,
got it.
All right, moving on to the next news. This is probably a big one because for our listeners, right, who might not be aware of the hyperscalers that are across, right? So you've got your biggies like the AWS, Amazons, and the Microsofts and the Googles of the world, and they have their own cloud offerings or platform offerings like AWS, Azure, and GCP, like Google Cloud. Now, what they do generally is they have a set of partners across, right, that help consumer build the right applications on top of these, right? And like AWS has their Bedrock offering, which is a managed service for building your LLM use cases or consuming LLMs out of the box, right? But what they do is they select they work very closely with niche partners, and they have created competencies or validations for such partners, right? And such partners who apply for such competencies or are selected go through very rigorous auditing process, right? So what AWS has done this week, Shiva, is they became the first hyperscaler across, right? While each of these hyperscalers have competencies and validations for partners, but in the GenAI space, AWS is the first hyperscaler to release a competency, a generative AI competency, which they launched at the Global Partner Summit in Seattle on the 6th of March, right? Now, what does this competency mean, and how does it benefit its partners or customers, right? So one is the competency was only by invite, so to a very select set of partners, right, which they felt were actually solving problems on generative AI, have actually built production workloads, have a bare minimum of 4 go lives, right? Mainly have experience in building generative AI workloads, right? Number 2, each of these partners had to go through a very rigorous 3-week audit where they had to probably showcase the complete capabilities, evidences in terms of what's the experience, get customers to speak for them, and so on and so forth experience, right? And then they selected a handful of partners, close to 30 partners globally, right, to become a launch partner for the competency, right? I would also like to share with our listeners, GoML is one of these, Shiva. We are one of the launch partners, along with probably some of the biggies like TCS and Accenture and Deloitte, right? But how does it now benefit probably the partners and the customers, right? That these select partners get access to 2 things. One is very exclusive funding, because there are a lot of MVPs and POCs that customers are doing. In most of my conversations that we have, Shiva, right? Customers are looking to do POCs or MVPs to explore generative AI. So these partners have exclusive access to some funds that they can leverage to help customers fast track some of these MVPs or POCs. Number 2, these partners will be part of an inner circle which will get the latest updates, access to the generative AI leaders and solution architects who are part of the Bedrock team, who have built Bedrock from ground up, right? So they get the exclusive technical ownership to probably help implement the best applications for the customers, right? So it's a very, very good validation, right? And we've seen in the past, Shiva, you've led the team to be one of the first partners to have ML competency in APAC, right? Competencies are a very good validation because the partners go through a very rigorous audit, right? And number two, obviously, once this happens, they get access to very, very exclusive resources to give the best to the customers, right? So, very good news. I think soon Azure and GCP will follow suit as well, Shiva, right? But I think AWS has taken the lead over here.
Yeah, I mean, it's fantastic to see such a young company do this so much so quickly. Again, congrats to the team and to viewers. I think the message is pretty clear from Rishabh. If you have a GenAI use case, speak to Rishabh, and you get support from AWS from funding standpoint, and you can bring your prototype up and running so quickly. So it's fantastic to see such progress. Okay, so that probably brings our show to an end this week. More news coming up next week. We'll again connect back in a week's time. Until then, take care. Thanks for listening to us.